everyone, my name is Mandira. Welcome to AglaSem, and today we are going to be studying class 10, chapter number 3, democracy and diversity. So in this chapter we are going to study about the different various kinds of groups that exist in a country, what kind of tensions rise when different social groups exist. Does it always mean that if there are three different social groups, then that will lead to social differences, or can we strike a perfect balance? So to all these questions, the answers will be provided in the chapters when we read them. So let's start with this chapter, and the first heading, a story from Mexico Olympics. So quickly we start with the story in the Mexico Olympics, where the civil rights movement was going on in the United States, and though African Americans they won the medals at Olympics, they decided that they would wear black socks without shoes to signify the poverty that exists in the African American communities in the United States, and they will put their hand up, and that will basically ensure symbolization for the black power and the civil rights movements. ठीक है, एक सिल्वर मेडलिस्ट भी थे who is a Caucasian or white Australian athlete, Peter Norman, who wore a human rights badge on his shirt during the ceremony to show support to two Americans. So what does that mean? Basically they were, as आपको पता ही है कि United States में there is a lot of racial issues. Even now there are a lot of racial issues that exist, that the black people, the African American community is discriminated against, and आज तक ये इश्यूज एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, बट ये तो थोड़ी सी पुरानी बात है, तो और ज्यादा मैग्निफाइड इश्यूज थे उस टाइम. एंड उस टाइम जो ब्लैक पावर थी उसको सपोर्ट करने के लिए उन्होंने ये जेस्चर किया, एंड बेसिकली दिस वाज टू ब्रिंग लाइट एंड दिस वाज टू ब्रिंग अटेंशन टू द रेशियल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन दैट परसिस्टेड इन यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स टिल डेट. तो ऑब्वियसली ये एक बहुत लोग बोलेंगे कि ये एक इंटरनल मैटर था, इसको एट एन इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म उनको वो नहीं करना चाहिए था, सॉर्ट ऑफ एक्सपोज नहीं करना चाहिए था, बट दैट्स एक्चुअली नॉट ट्रू, बिकॉज इट डजंट. अगर आपकी कंट्री के अंदर कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो आप उसको इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे बोलोगे नहीं, तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो प्रॉब्लम्स विल स्टॉप एग्जिस्टिंग. इट इज जस्ट दैट the international community will not know about it, and in fact when the international community comes to know about it, then the government that you are working with, that gets more pressure on it, and that's why these issues, the probability of these issues resolving becomes larger. So obviously the white Australian athlete also supported it, but उनको बहुत सारा backlash भी face करना पड़ा, उनको कंट्री के अंदर बहुत क्रिटिसिज्म फेस करना पड़ा बिकॉज दे मेड अ पॉलिटिकल स्टेटमेंट, एंड ओलंपिक से भी उनको डिबार कर दिया गया बिकॉज दे वर मेकिंग अ पॉलिटिकल स्टेटमेंट. और जो ऑस्ट्रेलियन एथलीट थे उनको भी, इवन दो ही वाज वाइट, उनको भी बिकॉज ही वाज सपोर्टिंग ब्लैक पावर, ही वाज आल्सो एड्रेसिंग द इशू ऑफ इनइक्वालिटी इन अमेरिका, उनको भी बहुत ज्यादा बैकलैश फेस करना पड़ा, एंड ही वाजंट अलाउड ऑन टू द ऑस्ट्रेलियन टीम. So, but there is also positive sides to the story. The civil rights movement, which was recently San Jose University, State University, of which they were former students, the African American students, honored them and installed their statues in the university campus. When Norman died in 2006, Smith and Carlos were his pallbearers at his funeral. So उनको obviously अपनी community से बहुत support मिला और कुछ state communities से भी support मिला, but as आपको पता ही है, कोई भी चीज international forum पे बात होती है, then there is always mixed reactions. Okay, so now let's talk about differences, similarities and divisions. यहाँ पे हमने ऑलरेडी पिछले 2 चैप्टर्स में we have discussed about Belgium, about Sri Lanka, about the different communities around the world. So अब हम बात करते हैं थोड़ी सी social differences की. So what are social differences? Basically हम लोग बहुत सारी एक by birth differences issue we experience. अगर आप अपने क्लास में बैठे हुए बच्चों से भी पूछोगे who have so much in common with you, that you guys are going to the same school, you guys are studying the same courses, even then you will see that a lot of people come from different backgrounds, they have different social traditions, different religions, all those kinds of things. ठीक है, so इन सब चीजों को हम कहते हैं social differences. Some of the differences are based on our choices. For example, some people are atheists. So some people choose not to believe in God. Some people choose to believe in one particular God. Some people believe, जैसे आप देखोगे कि in religions like Islam, mostly only one God they believe in. But अगर कोई हिंदू है, they believe in multiple gods. हमारे तो राधा जी, कृष्ण जी और राम जी, कितने सारे gods है ना. So ये अपना अपना एक matter of choice है ना, that which religion you choose to follow, or if you just don't choose to follow a religion, if you think that God does not exist, that's your prerogative and you are entitled to it. But then there are certain differences that you are born with. For example, if जो आपका एक financial difference है, किसी के साथ. For example, my financial situation is probably very different from someone who is earning much more than me, or someone who is earning much less than me. ये तो obvious सी बात है. So in those kind of differences, sometimes अगर हम all three of us decide to have children, then those children will be born into those different financial statuses. So maybe sometimes कोई government school जा रहे हैं बच्चे, तो शायद उनके पास उतनी money or resources nahi hai to go to the top private school of the college, so the city. So obviously these differences exist. Another crucial difference that exists by birth is that of caste. So that is something that cannot be controlled. If your parents belong to a certain caste, that caste is passed on to you. That's why it is very unfair to discriminate on the basis of caste, or to try to pull someone down just because they are not earning that well, because right now they do not have any kind of control over these situations. Okay, it is also very difficult to get out of a cycle of poverty and grow into a rich household. ठीक है, जो लोग already rich हैं उनके लिए अपना standard of living maintain करना और rich होना it's easier, but जो लोग poor हैं उनके लिए rich class में enter करना it is much more difficult. So again these are a bit थोड़ा सा एक जो walls हैं उनके around, that is that of the social differences. So अगर दो different groups एक country में exist करते हैं, then that is no issue. So for example African American community and Caucasian community, white community in United States, अगर इन लोगों का सारा economic status, सारा financial status और opportunities इन दोनों को एक जैसी मिल रही होती, discrimination नहीं होता, then it is just that they are people with two different kinds of skin colors. But that's all to the story, because African American communities are predominantly poor, they are devoid of opportunities, they are discriminated against. बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो उनके अगेंस्ट हैं हमारे उनके सोसाइटल स्ट्रक्चर में. सो that's when these social differences start to matter. Okay, so it is fairly common for people belonging to the same religion to feel that they are not part of the same community, or from different religions or different races to feel that they are part of the same community. एक एग्जाम्पल मैं आपको दोनों का दे देती हूँ. अगर मे बी दैट you have a friend who is also a Hindu or a Muslim or belongs to the same religious community as you do, maybe that person does not feel that you guys don't share the same beliefs about that particular religion only. Maybe you guys don't share the same beliefs about any kind of, let's say, climate, environment, feminism. कितने सारे topics हैं जिनके बारे में आपके issues same नहीं हो सकते. So maybe you feel that you don't belong to the same community. ठीक है? But there is also possibility that two different races या religions के they feel like they belong to the same community. जैसे कि हम देख रहे हैं यहाँ पे जो हमारे African Americans हैं दो, और उनके साथ एक white Caucasian Australian जो team player है, he is still supporting the civil rights movement, he is still supporting the black power movement. So obviously he is not African American, he is not black, but he is still supporting that movement because he feels that that's the right thing. ठीक है? So अब करते हैं overlapping and cross-cutting differences. Exactly, this is the one that we were talking about. कि when two different communities are existing, that's not an issue. But when one community is getting less opportunities, less financial gain, less privilege in a society as compared to the other, then the problems arise. Simplest example in Indian context is Dalits. They tend to be poor and landless. They face discrimination, injustice. Situations of this kind produce social divisions. When one kind of social difference becomes more important than the other, people start feeling that they belong to different communities. ठीक है? तो for example यहाँ पे एक ही दो ही मतलब same groups की बात हुई है in two different contexts. So in Northern Ireland, if you see, there are two Christians जो उनका group है वो दो parts में divided है, Catholics and Protestants. In Northern Ireland, class and religion overlap with one another. So if you are a Catholic, you are more likely to be poor. तो उन लोगों में एक and suffer a history of discrimination. तो अगर Northern Ireland में क्या है कि जो अगर आप Catholic हो तो आप ज़्यादा हो सकता है more chances of you being poor, more chances of you facing discrimination. So this kind of inequality exists. That's why the relationship between Catholics and Protestants is very tense. But on the other hand, in Netherlands, उनके जो social differences हैं वो इतने ज़्यादा नहीं है. They do belong to different communities, that is Catholics and Protestants, but they do share the same kind of opportunities. There is division of power, there is a good setup, that is balance in the system. So वहाँ पर इतना ज़्यादा उनके बीच में conflict नहीं है. ठीक है? So Belgium की बात करते हैं. Belgium is a small country with many communities. Even in those countries such as Germany and Sweden, which were once very highly homogeneous. Homogeneous मतलब सिर्फ अपने, जैसे for example अगर यूएस में सिर्फ और सिर्फ लेट्स से यूएस सिटीजन्स रहें और माइग्रेंट्स बिल्कुल भी ना जाएं, ठीक है, या फिर इंडिया में जो एक सर्टन लेट्स से रिलीजन के लोग हैं, सिर्फ वही सर्टन रिलीजन के लोग रहें, देन दैट इज अ होमोजेनस सोसाइटी, ठीक है, एक जैसे हैं सब लोग। माइग्रेंट्स क्या होते हैं? ये तो एक इंटरनेशनल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ही बात करनी पड़ेगी, इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, कि माइग्रेंट्स वो होते हैं जो यहाँ से इंडिया से वहां पे जाके सेटल हुए, या जर्मनी से वहां पे जाके सेटल हुए, यूके से वहां पे जाके सेटल हुए, एनी कंट्री, किसी भी कंट्री से आने वाले लोग माइग्रेंट्स, यू कॉल देम माइग्रेंट्स, ठीक है। And of course now ultimately the entire world is becoming a whole global community because there is a lot of migration. India से लोग बाहर जा रहे हैं, बाहर से लोग इंडिया आ रहे हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के लिए कंपनीज आ रही हैं, है ना। So without this kind of sharing of structures you cannot survive in the modern world. Next topic, let's talk about politics of social division. ठीक है, अब different communities are existing, yes उनके बीच में tensions भी हो सकती हैं, that's fine, लेकिन जब पॉलिटिक्स इन्वॉल्व हो जाती है देन दैट बिकम्स अ बिट ऑफ एन इशू। सो यहाँ पे बात करते हैं अगेन नॉर्थन आइलैंड की, आई थिंक वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट, यस। सो यहाँ पे क्रिश्चियनिटी इज 53%, प्रोटेस्टेंट 44%. The Catholics were represented by nationalist parties who demanded that Northern Ireland be unified with the Republic of Ireland, a predominantly Catholic country. Obviously, वो चाहते हैं कि जहाँ पे कैथलिक ज्यादा है वहां से यूनाइट हो जाए। The Protestants, who are referred to as the Unionists, want to remain with the United Kingdom, which is predominantly Protestant. ठीक है? Hundreds of civilians, militants, security forces were killed in the fight between Unionists and Nationalists, between the security forces of the UK and the Nationalists. ठीक है? Until 1998, peace treaty भी signed नहीं की गई, which later suspended the struggle. But in Yugoslavia, it actually led to the splitting of 6 independent nations. ठीक है? तो सबका happy ending नहीं होता है। सो अब बात करते हैं अबाउट द डिटर्मिनेंट्स दैट क्या एक सोशल डिफरेंस जब एक कंट्री में एग्जिस्ट करता है, व्हाट इज द पोटेंशियल ऑफ इट कन्वर्टिंग इटसेल्फ इनटू अ पॉलिटिकल फ्यूड और पॉलिटिकल सॉर्ट ऑफ फाइट। तो first of all, the outcome depends on how people perceive their identities. If people see their identities in singular and exclusive terms, it becomes very difficult to accommodate. So अगर कोई एक religious community का बंदा सोचे कि मैं तो भाई हिंदू ही हूँ और मैं मुस्लिम हूँ and that's all, यही है हमारी identity, then it's very difficult to think of ourselves as Indians before our religious affiliation, है ना? So if that kind of population exists, if that kind of mindset exists, it is the responsibility of the government or of the people of the country to change that mindset. That first think of yourselves as Indians and not the various religious communities that you might belong to. ठीक है? So the second is it depends on the political leaders and how they raise the demands of any community. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल फ्रेमवर्क के विद इन अगर आप डिमांड्स रेज करोगे दैट्स मच बेटर। फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आपको एक किसी भी हिंदू के या किसी भी मुस्लिम या किसी भी क्रिश्चियन या एनी कम्युनिटी के किसी भी इंसान के साथ कोई भी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है, देन गो टू द कोर्ट एंड सू द पर्सन हु हैज डन दैट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन विद यू एंड ऑफ कोर्स दे विल फेस द पेनल्टी। नाउ दैट्स द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वे टू गो अबाउट इट। बट इफ लेट्स से फॉर इंस्टेंस अगर किसी हिंदू के साथ कोई इनजस्टिस होता है या मुस्लिम के साथ इनजस्टिस होता है एंड इन रिस्पॉन्स टू दैट द पोलिटिकल लीडर्स, द कम्युनिटी स्टार्ट्स डिमांडिंग अ हिंदू राष्ट्र और अ मुस्लिम राष्ट्र, देन दैट इज नॉट अ वेरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल सोल्यूशन because the constitution obviously states that our country is a secular country. So it's not possible that we can declare an official religion out here. So again जो भी fights हैं, जो भी differences हैं, उनको constitutionally resolve किया जाए, that's better. Third, it depends on how the government reacts to the demands of different groups. ठीक है? अगर उनको आप क्रश करोगे डिसेंट को, दैट कोई भी अगर आपके गवर्नमेंट के अगेंस्ट बोल रहा है, कोई कम्युनिटी अपनी आवाज उठा रही है एंड यू आर ट्राइंग टू क्रश देम, यू आर ट्राइंग टू फोर्स पुट देम इन जेल, यू आर नॉट गिविंग देम मीडिया कवरेज, यू आर सप्रेसिंग देयर वॉइसेस, देन ऑब्वियसली दिस इज नॉट हेल्दी फॉर अ कंट्री. In contrary to this, अगर आप you are willing to share power, you are willing to accommodate their rights, you are willing to provide them with constitutional guarantee that they won't be discriminated against, then that's the healthy way to go. Okay. So this was the chapter on diversity and democracy, how we should handle it, how it should not be handled. I hope you got the gist of this chapter well. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section and to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening.